Hi folks, HR Funk here with something of a first for my channel. I'm doing my first ever knife review. I should say at the outset, I am not a knife expert. I am someone who uses knives, particularly the ones that I'm going to be talking about. And unlike the experts that you can see all over YouTube, I cannot tell you categorically that a blade manufactured with steel produced with ore from this particular mine is better than a blade produced with steel made with ore from another mine is better or worse or anything else. What I can tell you about is the items that I'm going to be reviewing here and tell you what my experience is with using them. First up is my Victorinox Tinker. This was my original Swiss Army knife that I received as a gift 15 years ago. I have done everything with this knife from slicing apples to repairing machine guns, and I never expected to. One of the benefits of a Swiss Army knife is that you have it with you, and the thing about the Tinker is it's pretty much a perfect tool to keep in your pocket. I cannot tell you how many gifts I've assembled on Christmas morning using this particular knife. It's gotten to the point where it's kind of a cliche that when the kids get some sort of a gift or an electronic that requires the screw to be removed so batteries can be put in, or those annoying little plastic tie downs that lock the gift into a cardboard box have to be cut, people look at me for my knife because they know I'll have it in my pocket. And I'm able to save the day, save Christmas Day that is, for the kids with this particular item. With that being said, I will note that the Swiss Army knife is not always the best tool for the job. Obviously, it's not the best tool for fixing machine guns. However, it's the tool you'll have with you, where the other tools are in a toolbox, down in the basement, out in the garage, back at the ranch somewhere. This is the tool you'll have in your pocket, and you'll come up with a way to make do with the items you have. That being said, what we have here is the main blade. This blade is very sharp as it comes from the factory. I've sharpened it a couple of times over the years. It holds an edge well enough for me. I've heard some people complain that the stainless steel used by Victorinox is kind of soft. I've never noticed it. Again, it works well for me. We've got the can opener here that I've used several times. It seems like whenever our can opener in the kitchen breaks, I'll have my Swiss Army knife in my pocket, my Tinker, and I'm able to open cans for my wife, hand them to her, and supper is saved. We also have a screwdriver. This one I think is a 5mm screwdriver, and the end of the can opener also has a small screwdriver that I've used to adjust sights on various firearms more times than I can remember. And we have the small knife blade over here. The small knife blade is probably the one that I use most often for anything from opening envelopes to cutting those plastic ties I was talking about to whatever. I just tend to use the small knife blade most of the time, and the large blade I reserve for bigger things like the slicing apples or something like that. This particular knife also comes with a pair of tweezers that I seem to use all the time for everything. Anytime I need to have a pair of tweezers, again, I'll have this knife in my pocket, and those things come out, and I'm able to use the tweezers for whatever I need them for. And lastly, the toothpick, which also comes in handy pretty frequently. As good as this knife is, I was recently thinking about an upgrade to this. I thought, I've been using this for 15 years. I would imagine that something else is made these days that I might enjoy a little bit more, maybe even add some functionality. So it didn't take much brain power to think that I wanted to stick with a Victorinox Swiss Army knife. And in a moment, I'll show you what I end up choosing as a replacement, and I've now had it for about 2 weeks. Before I leave the Tinker, it occurred to me there were two tools that I didn't show you before. That is the Phillips head screwdriver and the awl. The Phillips head is the one that I've talked about saving Christmas morning when I can open up those obnoxious battery compartments that have the little screws in order to get the batteries in so the kids can play with their new electronic marvel. When I decided to switch knives or to look for a new knife, I began looking at the Victorinox line to see what might be in there now that would serve my purposes, and the first thing that caught my eye was the new Swiss soldier's knife. I thought it was very cool that it's the current issue for the Swiss Army. I liked the knife itself. I liked the features that it had. It had all of the things my Tinker had, as well as having the saw with it. I wanted to make sure I wasn't losing any functions when I switched knives from the Tinker to whatever I was going to purchase. The one thing and the reason I ended up not going with the soldier's knife is because it didn't have the tweezers and the toothpick. Like I said, I actually use those items. Sometimes I even use them for what they're intended for. So I didn't want to lose those. A little bit more research revealed that the Swiss soldier's knife was nothing more than the Trekker knife that Victorinox had been marketing for a while. And I began looking at the Trekker and eventually found the one-hand Trekker, which, along with all of the functionality that was offered in the standard model, gave you the ability to open the knife blade with one hand. Ultimately, the one-hand Trekker is the knife that I selected, and I'll show you that here in just a moment. And here it is, my new one-hand Trekker. This is the one-hand Trekker NS, as a matter of fact, because it has the non-serrated blade. You'll notice with the standard one-hand Trekker that it has the serrated blade, and the serrations are on the front 2/3 of the blade. I considered that, and I decided I really didn't want it. I wanted to stick with just a standard blade, so that's what I have. If I have anything that requires serrations in order to cut it, I have a very good saw that comes with this knife. It still has the can opener with the small screwdriver. It still has the large screwdriver with the bottle opener. I still have the Phillips head. I still have the awl. The only thing I've given up with this knife is the small knife blade. And I decided that was something that, even as much as I used it with the Tinker, I could probably live without. I can make do with the big knife blade here, and still even add some functionality with the saw over what I had with the Tinker. I still have the tweezers, and I still have the toothpick down here. This was a camouflage version that I found on Amazon. With my history in the Marine Corps, history as a law enforcement sniper, the camouflage got me, so they reeled me in with that. Even though I realize, tactically, whatever exactly the word tactical means, this knife with its highly polished stainless steel is probably not tactical, and I really don't care one bit whether it's tactical or not. This knife I am very happy with. It has the same stainless steel that the Tinker had, that after all the years of use shows virtually nothing in the way of rust or corrosion or any other kind of blemish on the steel. Also, I tend to think of this as a tool. I don't think of it as some sort of a defensive device or anything that I'm going to be using in a fight. So I don't concern myself with blackened coating or oxides or even Duracoat for that matter. But I do kind of like the looks of the camouflage on the handle, which in Victorinox parlance are called scales. This knife, as I said, I've been using for about 2 weeks now. So far it's done everything I've asked it to, and it's done it very well. Quite happy with this knife. One thing that I want to point out that I added was this little flashlight. This is a Streamlight Nano, and this little thing is quite impressive. You might have noticed that there was a flashlight attached to my Tinker when I had it out here. That one is not really a great flashlight. It's just not that bright. This thing is at least half the size, maybe a little bit smaller than that, and it is extremely bright for its size. I can't say enough good things about that little flashlight. Overall, this package with the tools that I have available and the flashlight is a very handy item. One of the things I was worried about with the one-hand Trekker was that it's a larger knife than the Tinker, and I wasn't sure if it was going to fit as well in my pocket. As I said before, one of the things that makes the Tinker so handy is I have it with me. When I need it, it's in my pocket. I'm happy to say that at least with the pants that I wear, with the large pockets that I have, this fits well in a pocket. It doesn't have to be carried in a sheath. It's just as portable as the Tinker was. Along with all the other positive aspects of the one-hand Trekker is the value of this particular knife. This knife was $39.99, basically $40 for this knife, which I think is a very fair price for this particular item with the quality that it has and the selection of tools that are built in. So you're not going to break the bank, and that's really true for the entire Victorinox line. Generally, their tools, their knives are very economically priced. So that's another plus that we can put in their category. As I said before, this is the one-hand trekker, which allows one-hand opening of your main blade to be able to use for whatever cutting task you might have. I find that to be pretty convenient, especially if you have this hand busy doing something else and you can't use it to open your knife blade. A criticism I've seen of this knife is that the lock mechanism actually goes the opposite way of many locks. For right-handed users, normally you would push and then you could close the knife blade one-handed. What I've found is there's an easy workaround. Rather than pushing the lock, if you just pull it, and I'll demonstrate this on my arm, you can very easily close it one-handed, just a pull back on the lock instead of a push. And also, the large screwdriver blade has a lock, so it locks in place as well, and when you close it, you do have to move that lock out of place in order to close the large screwdriver blade. So that's my new knife, and that's my first knife review. Again, I'm very happy with this. If you have any questions and comments about this knife or the video in general, please leave those below. And until next time, good shooting. Bye-bye.